Paul, are you on?
Paul's here.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Calvin. Good morning, Yubi.
Member, shall I read the roll?
Good. Thank you. How are you?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Brissett, present. Councilmember Moreno. Councilmember Jeruso, present.
Here.
Councilmember Gibson Palmer, present. Councilmember Nguyen, present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Shy, and welcome to today's April 14th Budget Audit Board of Review Committee meeting. Mr. Shy has just called the roll. Will you read the agenda in its entirety? Afterwards, we will take a 10-minute recess to receive public comment. And to submit a public comment, just go on to our website, visit council.nola.gov. Public comments are limited to 2 minutes, read out loud. Comments must be germane to the agenda. And Mr. Shy will read the comments for each item the committee votes on at the end of that presentation. Mr. Shy, will you please proceed reading the agenda?
The agenda is as follows. Item number 1, roll call. Item number 2, approval of the minutes from the March 17th, 2021 meeting. Item number 3, presentation, American Rescue Plan. To present, CAO Gilbert Montano, Norman White, Finance. Item number 4, presentation, update on status of the 2019 annual audit. To present, Brandy Smith, Director, Postal Weight in Netterville. Item number 5, resolution number R-21-132, preliminary resolution for the $130 million of limited tax refunding bonds of the City of New Orleans, Louisiana, authorizing the application to the State Bond Commission for approval of said bonds and providing for other matters in connection therewith. To present, Jason Akers, Foley and Judell, LLP. Item number 6, motion number M-21-133, amendment to the classified pay plan, Health Project and Planning Senior Administrator, adopted by the Civil Service Commission on March 22nd, 2021. Item number 7, ordinance calendar numbers 33,273 and 33,274, introduced on March 25th, 2021 by Councilmember Brissett by request. These ordinances amend ordinance numbers 28,550 MCS and 28,551 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues and expenditures for the City of New Orleans for the year 2021 to appropriate federal grant funds from intergovernmental transfers to the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice Coordination for the fiscal year 2020 Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Fund, CESF, and the fiscal year 2020 Justice Assistance Grant, JAG, grant programs, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Item number 8, ordinance calendar numbers 33,275 and 33,276, introduced March 25th, 2021 by Councilmember Brissett by request. These ordinances amend ordinance numbers 28,550 MCS and 28,551 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues and expenditures for the City of New Orleans for the year 2021 to appropriate federal and state grant funds to the Office of Homeland Security to assist public safety personnel with exercises and training to enhance preparedness for responses to emergencies and disasters, along with administrative, equipment, and supply costs, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Item number 9, ordinance calendar numbers 33,277 and 33,278, introduced on March 25th, 2021 by Councilmember Brissett by request. These ordinances amend ordinance numbers 23,550 MCS and 28,551 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues and expenditures for the City of New Orleans for the year 2021 to appropriate state grant funds to the Office of Homeland Security for the fiscal year 2020 State Homeland Security Program for training and equipment for public safety personnel in relation to disasters and emergencies, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Item number 10, ordinance calendar numbers 33,279 and 33,280, introduced on March 25th, 2021 by Councilmember Brissette by request. These ordinances amend ordinance numbers 28,550 MCS and 28,551 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues and expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2021, to appropriate private grant funds from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation from intergovernmental transfers to the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice Coordination for the Safety and Justice Challenge Grant Program, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Item number 11, ordinance calendar numbers 33,281 and 33,282, introduced on March 25th, 2021 by Councilmember Brissette by request. These ordinances amend ordinance numbers 28,550 MCS and 28,551 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues and expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2021, to appropriate special revenue and trust funds from intergovernmental transfers to the Coroner's Office, Department of Public Works, Department of Police, New Orleans Recreation Development Commission, Department of Property Management, and the Vous Carré Commission to provide funding for non-personnel related expenditures such as supplies, equipment, and other related items, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Item number 12, ordinance calendar numbers 33,286 and 33,287, introduced April 8th, 2021 by Councilmember Brissette by request. These ordinances amend ordinance number 28,550 MCS as amended, entitled an ordinance providing operating budget of revenues and expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2021, to appropriate federal grant funds awarded by the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program to the Office of Homeland Security to assist with the elevation of historic properties in the city of New Orleans, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Item number 13, ordinance calendar number 33,289 and 33,290, introduced on April 8th, 2021 by Councilmember Brissette by request. These ordinances amend ordinance number 28,550 as amended, entitled an ordinance providing an operating budget of revenues and expenditures for the city of New Orleans for the year 2021, to appropriate funds from the Louisiana Department of Treasury to the Office of Homeland Security to be used by the Real-Time Crime Center towards the repair and acquisition of security equipment, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Item number 14, budget reports, CAO Finance. Item A, personnel spending forecast. Item B, revenue collections report. Item C, operating expenses, available balances by department. Item D, status of current workforce. Item number 15, other matters. Item number 16, adjournment. That is the agenda.
Thank you, Yubi, for that reading of the very lengthy agenda. Before we go to public comment, just want to state as in order of the agenda, presentation, agenda item number 3, the American Rescue Plan. This first presentation we have on the agenda is an update on American Rescue Plan funding that the CAO, Gilbert Montano, and Chief Finance Officer Norman White agreed to give. We are going to defer this presentation to the May budget meeting. My hope is that at next month's discussion, we'll have updates that includes the federal guidance. We're expecting to come out next month. Of course, with the large amount of money, a large amount of federal dollars at play, and all of the intricate moving parts in applying for that funding. And then it's essential that we continue to have open and transparent conversations about its future appropriation. As I've stated previously, this is an extraordinary and pivotal moment for the city of New Orleans as we plan out our future in the financial viability of our city and its recovery. And I look forward to hearing the latest updates before the Budget Committee from our CAO and CFO next month. So with that, thank you. And with that, we will now take a 10-minute break for public comments. It is now 10:40. We will return at 10:41. We will return at 10:51 a.m. Morning. Thank you and welcome back from the public comment period. We will proceed to presentation or update on the status of the 2019 annual audit. Agenda item number 4. Before we get to that, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the March 17th?
So moved.
It's been
Second.
moved by Councilmember Nguyen,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Palmer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4 yeas, no nays, and the minutes are approved. We have on the call with us Ms. Brandy Smith, Director of Postal Rate in Netterville. Good morning, Ms. Smith.
Good morning.
This agenda item is continued over from last month's budget meeting. The annual audit is yet to be submitted, the comprehensive annual financial report to the legislative auditor. We have received an extension for that deadline. Postal Rate Netterville was waiting on outstanding items from the city, including the trial balances for both the general fund and capital projects fund, as well as the capital asset reconciliation, and the finalized schedule of federal grants for the required single audit. The city was supposed to provide the outstanding items by March 25th. And Ms. Brandy Smith is here to provide us with a status update.
Good morning. We did receive those final trial balances for the general fund and the capital projects fund, and also the capital asset items within the last couple of weeks. We also received an updated schedule of federal grants for the single audit federal compliance audit yesterday. So we are in the process of testing those items, sending sample over, testing the account reconciliations. So as we have been sending samples and additional audit requests over, the city has been providing that information to us. We anticipate being able to send the rest of our samples within the next week. And, as we go through the information, sometimes we have additional questions and have additional requests. So we are working through that process. Assuming we don't run into any issues going through the information, we anticipate being able to issue the final report by the end of May. And like you mentioned, the extension request was approved through June 30th, and we believe we can issue the reports by the end of May.
All right, yeah, thank you. That was my questions. You're still expected to issue the final report by May, by the month of May, and finish the final testing this month.
Yeah, because we didn't receive all of the items by March 25th, like we had stated in the last meeting. That was the anticipated due date. So we did get those a little later than March 25th. So originally we had talked about issuing the reports by middle of May, but because we received a couple of the items a little later, we're pushing back our anticipated date to end of May. But at this point, we've received the major items. And like I said, we're just in the process of performing our testing.
All right, thank you. Please keep us in the loop on any further updates as you all proceed to finalize testing and submission. Council members, do you have any questions? Seeing none, Mr. Shy, are there any public comments?
Yeah, no public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Thank you for joining us, and we appreciate your work, and we look forward to the submission.
Thank you.
Next, agenda item number 5, resolution R21-132. This resolution gives the city preliminary approval for a $130 million bond sale regarding the city's general obligation bonds. If this resolution is approved, the next step is to apply to the State Bond Commission. We have our bond counsel available to speak with us, give us more details. Mr. Jason Akers from Foley Udell. Good morning, Mr. Akers.
Good morning. Thank you, council member. Thank you, all of you, for giving us time this morning. As the chairman mentioned, the resolution is really the first step in a process to refinance bonds that were issued by the city in 2012. Those 2012 bonds were actually refinancing of bonds that were issued in 2004, and those 2004 bonds were refinancing bonds that were issued in the late 90s. These go all the way back. These were originally the pension obligation bonds that were issued, and they've been issued and refinanced for savings, and refinanced for savings. And this is our probably last opportunity to refinance for savings now. Just to take a step back, refinancing municipal debt is much like refinancing your home mortgage or any other loan. You're taking old debt at a higher interest rate out. You're putting new debt at a lower interest rate in its place. You're not extending the final maturity, but by those lowering of the interest rate, you actually realize savings on the amount of debt service that the city is paying each year. In this case, the bonds that are currently outstanding, they were issued in 2012, are bearing interest at rates from 3.8 to 4.9%. And in current markets, that average coupon could be dropped to maybe as low as 2%. Of course, we don't know for a fact until we're able to get into the market. But if we are able to get that low, that would result in savings each year to the city of a little more than $1 million per year. Cumulative savings over the remaining life would be over $10 million. Again, at current market, which we can't guarantee will remain there. But that savings is also net of all costs of issuance. So the costs get paid associated with the issuance of the bonds, and then those savings that I mentioned are net of all of those costs. With your approval today, as the council member said, we move to State Bond Commission application and then come back to you at a later date with a plan of finance and hopefully a little bit more color in what the market will offer us at this point. We're a good 2 to 3 months away from that point. We're also going to be dependent upon, as Ms. Smith said earlier, the audit and when that is released. And so we're going to have to follow that very closely as well, because that's going to dictate our time. But we can't get the process started without your approval and advancing to the council meeting next week. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. It's something that a lot of local governments in the state as well are taking advantage of. And so it's a good time to get into the market and lower that interest rate.
Well, thank you, Mr. Akers, for the explanation and for the proactive approach you all are taking to come to us, especially where we are in the financial market, the interest rates, and what does this mean financially for the city as we talk about potential savings. And we look at the financial recovery of our city. I'm not sure if it's too soon to discuss what the impact of a potential sale will have on property tax millage rates for bond repayment. I don't know if you could get into that right now or come back to us in the future, but that was one of the questions that I had.
I can address it very quickly if you'd like me to. So these bonds are actually, these are different than the general obligation bonds that are paid out of a tax levied by the Board of Liquidation. These bonds are actually secured by what we call the constitutional millage, and that's that 13.91 mil tax that's authorized pursuant to the Louisiana Constitution to be levied throughout the city of New Orleans. So the savings that we're talking about, let's just say it ends up being $1 million a year. That's actually general fund savings, because that tax is levied for operations So that would be savings back to the general fund. There's no dedicated or automatic reduction in the tax being levied. That's something that the council could determine at a later date.
Thank you. Council members, questions? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Caruso, seconded by the chair. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Was there any public comment, Mr. Shaw?
There's no public comment on this item.
Thank you. 4 yeas, no nays, and the resolution is approved and moved to full council. Thank you, Mr. Akers.
Thank you.
Mr. Shy, on to next agenda item, the ordinances.
I want to do item
Sorry,
number
guys.
6. the
Sorry,
motion.
Murphy. Motion 21-133, amendment to the classified pay plan, Health, Department of Health Project and Planning Senior Administrator. Someone from the Department of Civil Service on the phone, on the line.
This is Robert Hagler from Civil Service.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Hagman.
At the March 22nd meeting of this year, the Civil Service Commission approved the new pay plan amendment, and that would say new job classification for the Health Department. It's entitled Health Project and Planning Senior Administrator. This position essentially builds on the current Health Project and Planning series, and this position would be basically for those individuals who serve over multiple programs. And remember, the health programs benefit the health outcomes for the citizens of the city of New Orleans. This new classification is at pay grade 90. It has a hiring rate of $74,242 annually, and the maximum of the range would go up to $105,126. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hagman. No questions from me, and seeing none from my colleagues. Mr. Shy, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment on this item.
Thank you. I would move approval of the motion.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Caruso. All in favor?
Aye.
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 4 yeas, no nays, and the motion is approved. Next item.
Good morning, council members. I'm Carla Felton, Deputy Director of Finance. Ordinance calendar numbers 33273 and 33274 to appropriate federal grant funds from intergovernmental transfers to the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice Coordination for fiscal year 2020, Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Fund, and fiscal year 2020 Justice Assistance Grant Programs. The funds is approximately $1,033,000. Funding will go towards operating expenses for local criminal justice agencies. We have a representative from Office of Criminal Justice for any additional questions.
Councilmember Palmer, you had a question for Ms. Felton?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Felton. We also have Commissioner Stevens. Commissioner Stevens, you had, good morning. I saw you popped up. I didn't know if you wanted to add to the discussion. You're on mute.
Yeah, good morning, Councilmember. I'm just here. Nothing to add further.
Thank you. Would move approval of, Mr. Shire, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment on this item.
We'll move approval of 33,273 and 274. Do you have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Nguyen. All in favor? Aye.
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 4 yeas, no nays, and ordinance is approved and moved to full council.
Ordinance calendar numbers 33275 and 33276 to appropriate federal and state grant funds to the Office of Homeland Security to assist public safety personnel in exercise and training to enhance preparedness for response to emergencies and disasters, along with administrative and equipment supply costs. It's in the amount of $161,000 approximately for operating expenses. We have representatives from Homeland Security for additional questions.
Thank you. I think I saw Mr. Bourgeois on the phone. Mr. Ross.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ross. You want to give us a glimpse of the operational cost and use?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and council members. This is our normal state Homeland Security grant program funds that we get every year from, there's a couple of ordinances. There are two different grants, but they mainly provide equipment for various projects amongst the public safety agencies. These projects are currently, the financing has been approved through the Office of Homeland Security at the state level, and the projects range from bomb suits and various training for the law enforcement agencies and other public safety agencies.
The administrative expenses are covered by these grants.
I'm sorry?
The administrative expenses are covered by these grants.
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Shai, are there any public comments? Council members, any questions?
There is no public comment on this item.
Thank you. I will move adoption.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4 yeas, no nays, and the ordinance 33,275 and 276 moves to full council. Next item.
Ordinance calendar numbers 3327 and 33278 to appropriate state grant funds to the Office of Homeland Security from fiscal year 2020 State Homeland Security Program for training and equipment for public safety personnel in relation to disasters and emergencies. Funds are in approximately $142,000 in operating expenses. We also have Ross Bourgeois for additional questions.
Thank you so much. Ross?
Councilmember, this is the EMPG funds that come out at the same time as the state Homeland Security grant funds. These are primarily for training and exercises for various evacuation and other exercises that we put on throughout the year.
All right, so it's for like tabletop exercises to make sure everything's going to run correctly during hurricane season, for example.
Yes, sir. And full-scale exercises, like the full-scale exercise that's coming up relative to the evacuation, the city-assisted evacuation program.
That's great. Thank you very much. Shai, do we have any public comments?
There is no public comment on this item.
Thank you so much. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Palmer,
Second.
second by Councilmember Nguyen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 3 yeas and no nays. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ross.
You're welcome.
Next item.
Ordinance calendar numbers 33279 and 33280 to appropriate private grant funds from John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation from intergovernmental transfers to the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice Coordination for the Safety and Justice Challenge Grant Programs. The amount is approximately $1.2 million, broken up in personnel and operating costs. We have a representative from OCJC for additional questions.
Okay. Who's on the line for OCJC? Anybody from OCJC? Well, why don't we do this? If nobody's on the line at this moment, why don't we defer this and we'll come back to it? Because I do think, in fairness, just a little bit of explanation is always a good thing. Can we move to
Russo, this is
Yeah.
Chad. I do see Nathan Weaver. It looks like I know he's OCJC, but he's trying to connect. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if he's having issues connecting. So maybe if we can delay this item and come back to it, that might work.
Yeah, that's perfect. Why don't we just delay? I've seen.
Joe, I'm here. Joe,
Oh,
I'm
there
here.
you are.
I've been trying to get off unmute, but my mouse is stuck.
Trust me, I was in March muting myself all the time, so I totally get it. So go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, you had a question about the,
Just generally, what does this transfer do? That's all.
it's just the money from the grant that we received from the Safety and Justice Challenge Grant. We've actually been receiving the funds since 2018. So this is the other part of the grant that we received a few months ago. So
Okay.
it's going to go to the same function that it has been going since 2017, and that is to safely reduce the jail population and all of the jail population initiatives that we have in partnership with the jail, public defender's office, municipal and traffic court.
Great. Thanks so much for letting us know about that. All right. Do we have any public comments on this item?
Remember, there is no public comment on this item.
All right. Thank you very much. Do we have to vote on the two ordinances separately, or do we take them up as one?
You can take these up as one.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve these ordinances, please?
So move.
Moved by Councilmember Nguyen. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3 ayes, and we have it. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Commissioner Stevens. Item number 11.
Ordinance calendar numbers 33281, 33282 to appropriate special revenue and trust funds from intergovernmental transfers to the Coroner's Office, Department of Public Works, Department of Police, New Orleans Recreation Development Commission, Department of Property Management, and the View Caree Commission to provide funding for non-personnel related expenses such as supplies, equipment, and other related items in the amount of $811,000 approximately. We have Eric Smith from the CAO's office to answer any additional questions.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, do you want to just give us a thumbnail about how this money will be allocated and its use?
Yeah, so these were special funds that we identified last year for the most part that either we're looking to be exhausted altogether. So for instance, the Ella West Freeman Foundation was a grant that was given to the city in 1979 and never spent for its intended purpose. So we are attempting to appropriate it to the Department of Property Management to finally write a handbook on masonry repair, for instance, which is what it was originally for. The largest one here is the Asset Seizure Fund, which is a fund that takes in the proceeds from asset seizures from federal, state, and local operations specific to narcotics. They generally have a standing appropriation. It's got left out of the regular 2020 budget. And we wanted to make sure that that got corrected so that some of these funds could get spent down to being a slightly more manageable number. Most of the rest of these are funds that, again, we're trying to exhaust so that they're no longer part of the city's annual audit.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation. Colleagues, any questions? Councilmember Palmer?
Yes, I do. I'm sorry. Is there a sheet that shows all of these funds? I think I saw that once before, and how much is left in each of the funds?
Yes, Councilmember Palmer. I've got a report with all of the funds, their balances, and histories that I can send over to your office.
Okay. Councilmember Drusa, do you think it would be appropriate to have this presented to the full council? I mean, I'd like to see, before we vote on it, where it's all coming from. And then that asset seizure fund, what is in there? How much is left in there? You're exhausting the whole thing, or you're just taking some out of it?
We're just right sizing the appropriation. So as of January 1st of 2021, the asset seizure fund has $763,000 in it. It has been accruing a balance. Generally, it takes in around $60,000 to $70,000 per year. Obviously, that varies by year just based on actions. And those funds can only really be used for equipment and other purposes specific to operations of the NOPD as a supplement. And so we really see that this year, especially, those supplemental funds could be of great use.
Wait, I'm sorry. Repeat that. What are these funds used for?
So the asset seizure fund can only be used as a supplement in terms of purchasing additional equipment and things for the NOPD. And so of that $763,000 balance, we've worked with NOPD to budget out $700,000 for this year, mostly to purchase additional vehicles and other equipment for office.
Okay, so within this ordinance is going specifically to NOPD for equipment.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think I heard you say to Eric that the requirement is, because it's part of asset seizure, that it has to be used for equipment for NOPD, and therefore what you're doing is line iteming it so it goes for the equipment that NOPD and other departments need as well.
Well, that specific fund can only be used by NOPD. So that particular one is going to NOPD. I can go through and tell you each of these where they are going in particular, and whether or not we're planning on the fund being exhausted and tired.
Could you do that for the public?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we're looking at, say, page 5 of the ordinance, where it details the funds in a chart, Coroner's Operational, that's a fund that was started in 2014 to collect various fees to the coroner's office. And it is then just used for operational expenses within the office, literally buying paper, staplers, and things like that. It was an oversight in the regular budget, the amount. And so this is a correction. Sidewalk Paving and Repair is a fund from 1954 that there are issues with with state jurisprudence allowing the city to ever really use this fund for its original intended purpose, which was as a repository for liens against property holders of adjacent sidewalks. And so what we've worked on is to exhaust the remaining balance, which is $2,080, which has been sitting there for over 40 years at this point, back to DPW to pay specifically for some sidewalk maintenance. Adopt a Pothole was a fund from 1987, wherein the city allowed citizens within certain neighborhoods to donate specifically to the city to fix specific potholes in their neighborhood. Obviously, it's a fund that hasn't gotten used a whole lot. Since then, it's come back and forth, but I think everyone has seen that there's some issues with allowing people to donate to fix potholes on their specific street. So this fund was originally exhausted, but had a small balance of $287, which again, we would like to put to DPW for the purpose of assisting in funding some pothole repair. The Asset Seizure Fund, as I said, is a repository for the proceeds from asset seizures, both federal, state, and local, specific to narcotics, and is required by ordinance to only be utilized to supplement equipment purchases for the NOPD. And the $700,000 appropriation here is meant to try and right size this fund. It has accrued a little bit more money than we had wanted. NOPD crime prevention is also being appropriated to NOPD. This is a fund that was started in 1973. It was the product of two small donations that were intended to go to the NOPD to purchase equipment. And so we have identified the fund, the balances, and intend to exhaust this by appropriating it to NOPD to meet its original intended purpose from 1973. The Playground and Community Service Trust Fund. This was a trust fund that was started as a predecessor to NORD in 1911. It was originally a repository for donations to the city to oversee playground repair primarily. It has been unused since the 1954 charter. And so we would like to move this over to NORD for repairs of various playground equipment. As I mentioned at the beginning, the Ella West Freeman Foundation fund here was the result of a grant from the Ella West Freeman Foundation in 1979, intended to fund the creation and dissemination of a manual on masonry repair. We have identified personnel within the Department of Property Maintenance that would be able to actually create said manual, and so would like to appropriate this over there to exhaust this fund and finally make good on our grant. The next four, Lafayette number 1, its proceeds, Mahala Zimmerman and Mahala Zimmerman proceeds, are 4 trust funds and their investment proceed funds that are specific to 2 tombs in the Lafayette Cemetery number 1. These trust funds were taken on by the city for those tomb repair and maintenance specific to only those 2 tombs. Over the course of the last 18 months, we have been able to identify a plan to restore both of those tombs to their original condition, and property management has created specific plans that would essentially require the use of these funds to get these tombs back to where they are supposed to be per their original trust donations. And then the final one, Vucare Residential, was a fund that was started in 1989 with the purpose of improving residential conditions in the French Quarter. More specifically, it was to encourage residential use of the French Quarter. We believe that again, it's a fund that was donation-based and has not been utilized in the last 30 years, last 25 years. And we would like to appropriate its balance to the VCC for their enforcement measures and exhaust this fund. So again, we can eventually abolish it and no longer have to spend time and energy auditing it every year for the CAFRA. I believe that covers all of them. If there's any further explanations I can give, please let me know.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Eric, I think it was a perfect explanation. The only thing you missed is we like to make fun of Councilmember Banks anytime something dates back to 1954. So that's our standing thing. Councilmember Palmer, I think that was a really good point to ask, kind of where it's coming from and all of the different funds and how they're being spent and down. Having gotten that full explanation, do you feel satisfied?
Yeah, I
where
do.
this is- All right. Well, great. Then with that, Eric, thank you for the explanation. That was extraordinarily helpful. With that, I will move for approval. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Nguyen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. 3 yeas, no nays. Thank you all very much. And thank you for putting this on the screen. That was extraordinarily helpful too. All right, let's move on to item number 12, please.
And Councilmember, there was no public comment on that item.
Thank you. I should have asked. Thanks for setting me straight. All right.
Ordinance calendar numbers 33286, 33287, to appropriate federal grant funds awarded by the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program to the Office of Homeland Security to assist with the elevation of historic properties in the city of New Orleans. We have representative from Homeland Security for additional questions.
All right. Mr. Feldbaum, are you going to give us a brief presentation on this?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Members of the council. So this grant is another grant from the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program. The funds are to elevate 31 properties located around the city in 5 different historic districts. They've all been identified by FEMA as severe repetitive flood loss properties based on their history of prior floods. And this project will elevate them to be compliant with the city's current building codes. I'm available to take any other questions.
One quick question. I know you cannot identify the properties individually. Can you give us the historic districts that they fall in?
Yes, sir. I believe it's 5 different districts. If my memory, I can certainly follow up to confirm, but they were located in the Broadmoor, Carrollton, Mid-City, Bayou St. John, and I want to say Marleyville districts. But I can confirm that.
What was the last one?
Marleyville.
Marleyville. And are all the funds being used for the specific purpose of elevation?
Yes, all of these homes will be elevated. The budgets include a small amount for what we call site work or soil stabilization. So that's installation of some sort of stormwater retention, green infrastructure type feature on the property once the construction is completed. The city typically uses about 1 to 5% of the budget for our administrative purposes in order to verify that the work's being conducted in compliance with the grant. But other than that, all of the funds go directly to the homeowner and to their contractors to complete the project.
All right.
Mr. Chair, follow up on your question. Yeah, Austin, is there a cost for the homeowners relating to this grant?
On this particular grant, no, ma'am, there's not, because all of these homeowners were identified as severe repetitive loss. FEMA has the ability to waive the cost share requirements for that category of property. The standard for this program is a 25% homeowner share, and FEMA may reduce that to 10% or to 0%, depending on a property's history of flood losses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Nguyen. Seeing no other questions, Mr. Shai, any public comment?
If Councilmember Palmer, Mr. Palmer has a question.
Hi, Jared. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry, Councilmember.
No worries. Austin, my understanding too is like with section 106, a lot of times elevation could detract from the historic character. And in fact, you're kind of dinged on that. So do you have to go through a section 106 review on these properties as well?
Great question. And yes, ma'am, we do. So because this is federally funded, it's got to go through some sort of environmental review process, including Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. Because these properties have been pre-identified as historic, we know that they'll all have to go through a series of what FEMA refers as mitigation measures. Last year, FEMA and the State Historic Preservation Office finalized a statewide programmatic agreement, which kind of codifies a lot of the workflows and processes that we've been working to establish over recent years. So we're hopeful that that'll make that process less mysterious and a lot more timely. In short, all of these homes will have to go through design review, in which we will submit architectural plans prior to construction to both FEMA and the State Historic Preservation Office for their feedback. They'll make any required revisions known to us, and they'll also make recommendations on how to reduce or minimize impacts to historic structures. If they determine that we can't avoid impacting the historic resources, then we'll go through a process of design review prior to construction, then also at the end of construction to archive the status of the architectural features before we alter them, and afterwards as well.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Shire, any public comment?
There are no public comments on this item.
Thank you. Would move adoption.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Palmer,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Nguyen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4 yeas, no nays, and the ordinance 33,286 and 287 is approved and moved to full council. Next ordinance.
Ordinance calendar numbers 33289 and 33290 to appropriate funds from the Louisiana Department of Treasury to the Office of Homeland Security to be used by the Real-Time Crime Center towards the repair and acquisition of security equipment. Again, we have a representative from Homeland Security to answer any additional questions.
Mr. Bourgeois.
Good morning again, council members. This is a state legislative appropriation from the state's general fund from last year's session that will allow $100,000. It was shepherded by Senator Bowie, and it's installed 13 public safety cameras in the upper and lower Ninth Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. And just for the public's appreciation and understanding, can you give us a rough understanding of, how much does one of these city cameras cost roughly that NOSEP invest in that's throughout the city?
Yes, so the expenses are roughly 50% of them, or about $54,000, is going to fund the purchase of the actual equipment. $45,000 will purchase 2 years, 24 months of connectivity to the network, the actual Cox internet connectivity to our network. So that's how the appropriation was structured, to finance 13 cameras, to buy the equipment, and to cover the operational costs for the first 2 years. So this is a net zero for the first 2 years to our operating budget. So that each camera costs right around $4,500 for us to purchase the raw materials and assemble the box ourselves. We do that with in-house labor, as opposed to utilizing an integrator, and we do the installation ourselves with in-house labor, which is a tremendous cost savings from the original 225 crime cameras that were installed by an integrator before we had built in the capabilities and the capacity to do it all in-house.
Thank you. And just want to give my thanks and appreciation to Senator Bowie, who's my overlapping senator and covers a good portion of my district for the Upper Ninth Ward, for his work in the legislature and securing the funds out of House Bill 1, the appropriation bill. Council members, any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could also echo my appreciation for Senator Bowie too, for including the lower nine, which he also a representative in that area. But Ross, what happens after 2 years with the monitoring fees?
So that's the internet connectivity fees, right? That's that's the cost of internet connectivity to get it from the pole back to our storage servers at City Hall. After the 2 years, obviously that cost would have to be borne by the city. But in years past, this will be the fourth time we've gone at this. The legislators have been very kind and have added additional operating expenses to these types of appropriations in the past. So the original set of cameras that the legislature appropriated were for 8 cameras in the Gentilly area, and we were able to, last year's appropriation, they were coming close to the end of their 2 years and they re-upped them. So we will continue to work with those senators and representatives on the state level for them to continue to invest, to reinvest in their initial investment.
Great. Thank you. Can you confirm that those cameras are up in both the lower and the upper nine?
I can confirm that all the none of the cameras are as of now, obviously. We haven't purchased them yet, but it is all of these cameras will be installed as per the contractual agreement in the upper and lower Ninth Ward.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ross. Mr. Shai, any public comment?
There is actually one public comment. I'll read it into the record.
Thank you.
This comment comes from Justin Schmidt. Physical address is 1506 7th Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70115. Email address is justinschmidt@cox.net. He is representing self, and he is not a paid representative. The comment: because of a perceived ambiguity in the open meetings law, which has been interpreted by this council to not require public comment on matters which are publicly noticed, but for which action is not taken, I am repeating comments that I submitted at yesterday's ad valorem and dedicated revenue special committee, which were not read. This budget would be easier to manage if the council pursued 100% of the 1914 Wisner donation trust revenue that it is entitled to as of August 4th, 2014. On October 1, 2020, the trust received $1.5 million of its $30 million BP oil spill settlement, and the city, through Mayor Cantrell's direction, redirected it to private individuals and institutions. Let's fix this now. That completes the comment.
Thank you. Would move adoption of a second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Palmer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4 yeas, no nays, 33,289 and 290. Move to approve and move to full council. Thank you, and that concludes. Thank you, Ms. Felton, for joining us. Next up, we have the budget reports, agenda item 14.
Good morning, council members.
Good morning, Mr. McElroy.
Okay, I will be presenting both the revenue and the budget reports this time. Now that Yulby is moved over to a different position. You would like to begin with the budget?
Yes.
Okay, let me see. All right, so we have the 2021 personnel spending projection. I have some notes here, excuse me. Yeah, we,
Councilmember Moreno has joined us. Just want to reflect the record.
all right, we have, I should note at the beginning, before discussing the specific numbers in personnel spending projection, the payroll data goes through April 9th. The latest admin pay period, this is in the footnote here, ends March 20th, and the latest police and fire pay period ends March 27th. Also, we are assuming still 3 NOPD recruit classes in 2021. Let's see, perhaps the largest number that needs to be discussed here that stands out is the fire department deficit, $6.5 million. This appears to be mainly unscheduled overtime, which I believe the council members have already heard about in previous meetings. Still driving this number here. And then there is some unscheduled overtime as well in the police department. Most of these are okay. Some of these will be seasonal. For example, the miscellaneous category has a very large percentage surplus, but that is mainly because it includes things like the Summer Youth Employment Program, which of course will begin to kick off soon, and we'll take care of that large number there. As far as other categories, there are not really too many, crazy things to worry about right at this point, as far as we can tell. Some of these things have totally normal fluctuation, the unattached boards, for example, and we will get a clearer picture of all of these things next month once we, have a stronger trend line to show. It's a little tough at the beginning of the year with natural variation can throw off the trend line. That's about all I have for this one, unless there are specific questions. Okay.
I guess my questions.
Councilmember Palmer.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
With the surpluses in some of these departments for personnel spending are in departments that need to be staffed up. So I guess this really isn't a question to you as much as a question to Mr. Montano. What do you, is that my, I mean, that's my understanding. It just gives me a little pause when I see surplus in departments that need more assistance.
Yes, it is my understanding, council member, that there are still a lot of vacancies waiting to be filled. Now that the COVID situation is getting under control and we can begin hiring again. Right, there are a lot of positions there, which to me explains most of this, unless the CAO has or anybody else has any specifics they'd like to throw in.
I see Norman jumped on. I'll let him take the first shot, but because I'm positive we have the same answer. Go ahead, Norman.
Oh, well, yeah, I agree with you. Good morning, council members. I think if you recall, we talked about how, we know we had $100 million shortfall, so the budget would cut just to balance this particular year. I think all of those things. And so pretty much we're waiting on the stimulus dollars to arrive. But giving some level of comfort, we did move forward on some activity. For example, part of the activity would be to move everyone off of furlough days, and that's around $30 million with some other expenses associated with it. And then we, in addition to, we kind of staffed up in some police and emergency services. But the money isn't here yet. And so we have to be very careful not to go in and return everything back to where it was in the past, and back actually in 2020, because again, the money's not here. What we're doing is risking it. And as a result of how risking it, we have to cover it with the monies we have set aside, which would be the $50 million loan. We have to make sure we don't go above that, but we are ready. We're staffed up to make sure that we approve the positions once we get the money on hand, and then we'll move forward as expeditiously as possible. Gilbert, I don't know if you want to add to that, but certainly.
No, it's just I think you hit it on the head. We're in a little bit of a limbo period, and we hope to move forward extremely as quickly as we possibly can. We hope as early as early May.
And again, and I agree with that. And thank you so much, Mr. White. And Ms. Montano, I absolutely agree that we need to be strategic and not necessarily staff everybody up to the pre-COVID levels. I'll just reiterate for the record, like I said last time, I do think there's some departments though that we need to be operating at full capacity and maybe perhaps even greater capacity in order to help spur the economic development of the city. So that's just my comment. So thank you.
You're welcome. And through the chair, if I can add this, you're right, and I agree with you. And the way we're going to look at this is, one, we clearly move forward with the emergency services, but those departments that will, by bringing in positions, will increase revenue and or lower costs to help us get in line with what we consider our revenue return to be over the 5 years that we are projecting out. I believe that the CEO spoke to yesterday would pretty much be our focus. So we agree in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the CFO and CAO for weighing in there. We can now turn to the operating expenditures, 2021 other operating expenditures. So in this, excuse me, on this part of the presentation, not a whole lot of notes. There is one thing to point out, which is on the line 720 Ethics Review Board, there is a negative number for budget minus obligated. That appears to be like a glitch. That does not appear to be real. They do not appear to have committed more money than their budget. Still getting at the bottom of that one. Everything else is fairly routine, as I understand. I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. If anybody has questions. Mr. Chair, would you like to continue? Shall we go to the?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, just making sure. It's my first time here. I don't want to leave any bases uncovered. Our next slide will be the City of New Orleans workforce status by department. Let's see. So this which is just showing our number of employees, percent on civil leave and not, and remote workforce. Again, this is pretty routine. We see most of our departments are working in their locations, not at home. Some of these are, some of these will not be a surprise. To the extent that employees are able to work from home in some departments, they still have, but as you know, we are beginning to bring people back into the buildings. This is just the update here. This, I'm sure, will change by next month. Again, not a whole lot of information, that I had planned to cover here unless there are any other questions. Mr. Chair, with your permission, we'll do our last slide, which will be the City of New Orleans revenue collections. The first thing I want to note here is that 1A property tax was not updated since last month. We are still receiving payments. The money is coming in. However, it's just, the posting is a little slower this year. Everything was a little pushed back with the property tax collections. So I don't see any cause for alarm right here. I mean, the number is lower than it should be, of course, but we are receiving the money, and we will, be catching up on this. Hopefully by next month, I expect we'll have made a lot of progress on this, so it will look more normal. But no glaring issues for property tax that I'm aware of. Other taxes.
Mr. McGowan, I would ask you all to, I'm pretty sure the updates to the revenue collections will be updated prior to next month's budget monthly meeting. So I would ask you to forward to us the revenue collections as of the latest update with the most current numbers.
I'm making note of that now, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And this might not be for you, Mr. McElroy, it might be for Ms. Montani, but have y'all tracked to see what kind of savings the city has had with less people, with more people working remote? Other businesses have seen a savings in either utilities, maintenance, those kinds of things. Are we tracking whether or not there's been any savings in certain areas of our budget?
Mr. Chair, Madam Councilor, now, yes and no, and I hate to always try to answer both sides of those. On the operational side, we have not really tracked nor seen significant savings, say on energy costs, electricity, those type of utility bills. However, as we're reprogramming the formidable future of a new city hall, we did learn a lot of things as far as the overuse of some of our office space. So we have cut hundreds of thousands of square footage on what the future footprint of our new city hall at some point will have, and the effect that it'll have just on our normal operational side. So as far as the actual light bill and the like, I do not have information on what the savings is relative to that. But as far as the future of the workforce and the amount of space that we are needed and kind of the display of that space, yes, it has been very, very valuable to watch this last year occur so that we have a better perspective moving forward for the new city hall.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, Councilmember Palmer. And Gilbert, right before you leave, can you give us an idea of what the administration's thinking about next revenue estimating conference and projections?
Sure. Mr. Chair, I think I'd probably want to confer with Norman and Randall a little bit more thoroughly instead of directly giving a date and a period of time. Typically, they're done in the summertime. We have a much nuanced perspective now with the implementation or soon implementation of these federal dollars coming into play in early May. So maybe if I can just postpone the answer to that question until I've better vetted with the team a more of a unified response. Getting ahead of my skis as far as the summertime decision for REC. It may be later, and I know perhaps the audit has some play in that as well. So
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
Councilwoman Caruso, yeah.
Two things. Randall, you're doing a great job for the first time on this. We appreciate. Gilbert, thank you for being here. It may be too early for both these questions, but just so we know, I think we were around 170 million last year on property tax collection all in. Do we know if we'll be around that number this year, sort of based on what we're seeing and sort of additions to and subtractions from the property tax rules?
Yes, that is an excellent question. We should be about on par with last year. So once the the quadrennial reassessment was done, some changes can be made in millages, et cetera, small changes within that framework. However, the overall picture should remain fairly constant, basically until the next quadrennial reassessment, or if some very large change is done in millage rates, which, you would know about certainly. So I expect we'll be, we sort of plateau between reassessments, and we should keep about on that level. There may be some small amount of variance, but not anything significant.
Okay. And then I realize I'm going to ask a trending question here that may be too early to forecast, but it looks like, sales tax were roughly 9 million per month. Is there thinking, putting aside, as Gilbert pointed out yesterday with J&J, that number will start trending up over the next couple of months?
I'm so glad you brought that up. That was my next point. I do believe, so a lot of the sales tax, or this category in general, a lot of the money in here depends on, if we are able to reduce the lockdown measures, return more to normal. And we have had much better vaccine rollout than I anticipated. In terms of the manufacturing capacity, I didn't expect that they would roll this out so much. And of course, residents of New Orleans have been very good at getting their vaccinations. That being said, I do anticipate a slight upward trend, yes. Now, there will still be some lingering effects from, we can't have a disruption this large and return to normal immediately. However, I am cautiously optimistic about this. As you can see, and the percentages are small, but last year at this point, we were at 14% of our anticipated sales tax collection, and now we're at 16 already. It is a lower target. However, the pace is just slightly picked up. And again, it may be too little to really draw from thus far, but I do expect slight uptick there based on how well we've been able to, get shots into arms. The one thing you'll notice actually on the same point, the hotel and motel tax is where the big hit comes in. Where that's, as we know, we're just, that industry is devastated, substantially less money than last year. If we can, if the vaccine rollout really does appear to be, not only here, but elsewhere among people that might visit, if it really does maintain steam here, we could see some gains there. Certainly not to a normal year level, right? Because many of these things are for conventions that are scheduled long in advance and that sort of thing. But we have some gains to be, possibly on the table there. And this is one category I'm watching like a hawk. But basically, the short answer is yes, we should see, an uptick from this based on the much better pace of vaccination. The manufacturing capacity in particular, I was pleasantly surprised by.
Yeah, thanks, Randall, and everyone for this. I think you've articulated it well, which is we have a 2% increase, and that's a result of more vaccination production than we could have anticipated. And I think we're at 40% vaccination in the city. And that's a credit to the mayor and her team for really pushing that message so strongly and continuing to do so. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Well, that about covers this category. One small note, the document transaction tax, that's just the pace of, a lot of this is a real estate change in hands. The pace of that has picked up a little bit, as the kind of economic reorganization happens. That's something we're watching. I don't want to draw too much attention to it because it's a relatively smaller part of the category, but this is a sort of a sign of economic adjustment to conditions. So it's, it's a little up, of course. We will like it when it stabilizes more towards a normal year.
But wait, a document tax, you'd want to see that increase because that means that there's more happening in the real estate market.
This includes things like commercial properties and such. So, if a business is closed and bought by somebody else,
Do you have those statistics?
I don't have them in front of me. The level of detail, I can follow up on this, but the short answer is I don't have too much of that in front of me now.
Okay. If you could get that, I think that would be helpful. Again, it speaks to what's happening in other parishes in terms of sales, of property sales, and also building construction. So I think that's a really important thing to watch and to make sure that we're not limiting that. Also, do you have a breakdown in the property tax in terms of commercial versus residential? And how much of a hit that when the assessor lessened the assessment on some of these larger commercial properties, what is the dollar hit to this budget?
I do not have a breakdown of this. I will have to check with the relevant departments about this, just to make sure that to see what they have, to make sure I can give you useful information if possible. But that's not part of our standard breakdown. So I will look into it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer Jeruso. I believe, McElroy, I think that completes your revenue collections report, or you have anything to add?
Let's see. Most of this is about what we expected, so there are not a whole lot of updates. There is some some large things that are payment timing, like the Medicaid UPL payment, which it just comes in when it comes in. So it's nice to see a large percent increase from last year, but a lot of that is sort of ephemeral and it will come out. One thing I want to point out here, fines and forfeits is much lower, and we expected it to be, and it is. This, of course, reflects less movement around the city, and this should stabilize. And really the last thing to point out is, once again, is the interest. It's a relatively small amount of the budget, but this is where we see our cash position. Last year, we had a lot more cash earned in interest. This year we have less, but with the relief money coming in, this may pick up depending on how we assign where the funds are put. All told, we are comparing this year, which has been all pandemic, versus last year, which was up to this point mostly not pandemic. So it is, of course, going to be a little lower. However, it's not as low as it could have been, and we of course will keep monitoring this as the vaccine rollout happens, and keep the committee updated. And are there any questions? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No questions. Just a reminder to send the information requested relative to the property taxes update before our next month's meeting. Send it to all council members, as well as the breakdown residential versus commercial that Councilmember Palmer just requested.
Noted.
Budget.
Yes, ma'am.
And that just actually brought up another mind. Are y'all taking into consideration, with the Four Seasons coming online and the amount of property taxes from the residents in that structure, and how that's going to impact the budget, the revenue projections?
So that's a very specific project. So while the certainly will be an increase, it is difficult to at that level of specificity put that in. We do have a very slight bump from last year, due in part to things like this, more construction, more things opening, but that's a little too specific to project confidently. at that level. So we tend to, stick to the more macro scale.
Okay. Because I'm thinking it's going to be around 175 to $200 million in property sales.
It will be nice to have. That is for sure. We'll keep an eye on this, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That completes all of the budget reports and all of the agenda items for today's budget committee meeting for the month of April. Thank you, council members, colleagues, and thank you, Yubi, who's first budget hearing with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Thank you to our staff. Would entertain a motion to, actually, Yubi, is there any public comment on these budget reports?
No public comments.
Thank you. Would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Councilmember Palmer and seconded by Councilmember Druso. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5 yeas, no nays, and we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good day.